record this. Okay, so first I'm going to select my 12 photos real quick that I would like to print. Okay, 1 second. Just selecting a sample set for this demo. So we have it. Okay, let's see. All right. One too many. One, two, three, four. Sorry, bear with me. Just getting the exact sample set that you guys are going to be working with. So, all right, so 12 photos. I have 12 photos here selected. You guys will also have 12 photos. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the normal process and I'm going to select my photos. I'm going to go to export and I'm going to go to export again. This is where things slightly change. We're still going to do all the same things as before. We're going to find the section in which we're going to put these photos. So I'm going to go to my folder where I want to put this folder. I'm going to go documents, going to go to FITM, and I'm going to create a new folder. And this is printing demo. You guys are going to name your folder according to what your thing is. This is for me, printing demo. The date is 6/8. Okay, and then I'm going to do a new folder and I'm going to name the folder for print 300 PPI. Now, the 300 PPI is the key thing to this. Previously, we have always been exporting photos with 72 PPI. 72 PPI is the amount of pixels needed to see a clear image on your screen. In this instance, we need to up the amount of pixels within our shots. And in order to do that, we need to set them to 300. 300 is a set standard for printing. There are reasons and scientific reasons why the number is 72 and why the number is 300, but we're just know that we're going to go with 300 in order to print. And I've labeled my folder as such. Okay, so I'm going to hit choose and now I'm going to name my shots. So this is printing demo. I'm going to put my first name, my last name in it because that's what we do. And then I'm also going to label my file with the addition of for print 300 PPI. So there is not a shot of a doubt what these files are going to be. Now, before we hit export, we have to go and we have to make our shots actually print ready. So I'm actually going to uncheck resize to fit. We don't want to resize it, but we are going to change the resolution. This is pixels per inch. That's what PPI stands for. So we're going to change this resolution to 300. And now we've set up our file and our exports to be ready to print. We know these files are the highest quality possible. So then we're going to hit export. This might take a little bit longer because what it's doing is actually exporting full resolution shots of what you took photos of. Now, the cameras you use are depending, it might take longer to do that. But once we get a final folder of these photos, we're going to see the files are going to be much larger, actually too big to do things like upload to Canvas and send to via email. So what we have to do is we have to go back in and we have to actually export a separate set to turn in digitally for our assignment. So I'm going to change the location. I'm going to do for digital because we're going to be submitting it in a digital way. And I'm going to label it 72 PPI. Now, select that location. I'm going to actually change my name at the end of my file names. And I'm going to change it to I'm just going to change it to 72 PPI. I'm going to not write the whole thing. And then I'm going to recheck resize to fit, change it back to 1920 and put it to 72 because I need the small files now. I want the small files, the smaller files that we've been exporting all quarter. So if it works better for you to do this one first, just know that you need to label a set of exports as 72 PPI and actually change the resolution, and then re-export the same 12 photos without resizing to fit at 300. So we get two separate sets of photos. One set of photos that we've resized and we've set to 72 PPI with the proper pixel dimension of 1920. And then another set of photos where, and just to refresh your brain, the 4 print set of photos is going to have this unchecked, not checked, and the resolution changed to 300. So that would be the 4 print set of photos. That's the most important thing, that when you're printing, you grab exports that you've made this setting change, okay? To reinforce that. So then when we go to our Finder, what we have here is, let me pull this up. We have a folder, printing demo, and inside we have 4 print and we have 4 digital and 4 print. So in here, just to give you an example of the differences in file size, when I go here and I select a photo, one photo is 32 megabytes. And the pixel dimension is about 4,000 by 4,000. Or actually 8,000 by 5,000. They're really big photos. If I go to the one that I've exported for digital, it's the same photo. It's the same exact photo, except it's now 825 kilobytes, so less than a megabyte. We go from 32 megabytes to less than 1 megabyte in file size, and then our dimensions are much smaller. The quality of the photo is the same. So this is the small photo for digital, and then this is the larger photo for print. What you notice is that the size is much different, as even when it opens on my screen, and you will see the quality difference when you print. It might be tough to see the quality difference on the screen, but you will see the quality difference when you print. So now I want to make sure for printing, to set my file up to print, I want to make sure that I'm working with everything out of this folder, the digital 300 PPI folder. Now, I'm going to show you this process in Photoshop, and I'm just going to show you what we need to do is we need to set our files up for printing and organize them in a way that makes the most sense. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Photoshop. I'm going to open a new file. Okay, so I'm in Photoshop and I'm going to create a new file. Okay, and what you want to do is when you're creating a new file, you want to set the dimensions of the file to the exact dimensions of your paper, the paper that you're going to be printing on. Okay, and so you want to, if you know you're going to be using the 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, we'll just use that. There are bigger pieces of paper that you can potentially use, but we'll run with 8.5 by 11 for this demo. I'm going to do 11, 8.5 inches. And then the other thing you want to make sure you do is you set your file up to the proper resolution. We are printing these files, so that means our Photoshop file needs to be 300 pixels per inch. And we're going to hit create. Now, once you do that, you have, let me pull this up on the screen. You have a file that looks like this piece of paper, essentially. So our goal now is to fit our photos on this piece of paper. Okay, so I'm going to open a Finder window to my folder, my photo location. For print, and here are my photos here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually one at a time, or maybe like maybe do 3 at a time. I'm going to drag them onto my Photoshop file. So I'm dragging them onto the new Photoshop file that I've created. And I'm going to hit enter for every time for each photo that I have. So I know I dragged 3, so I'm going to hit enter 3 times. And what that's going to do is going to place each of my photos as individual layers here, 1, 2, and 3. So I'm going to select all my layers like so by holding shift, click the first one, hold shift, click the last one. And then I'm going to, what I want you to do is change the size of these shots to fit all of these on my piece of paper. Okay, so how I'm going to do that is I'm going to get my transform tool. You can quickly get the transform tool by selecting Command T as in transform, and then I'm just going to drag my photos to make them smaller. And I'm going to do this visually. As you can see, I can kind of maybe gauge how many of these photos I can fit on this sheet of paper by doing this. Let's see if I can fit 4. Okay, so I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to actually one by one drag my layers, separate them. Okay, now I've fit 4 photos on one sheet of paper. I can, or 3 photos, sorry. So I can fit another one. So I'm going to drag another shot from my folder onto my Photoshop file, hit enter, hit Command T, and I'm going to drag down and change the dimension and kind of align it. And now I have 4 shots on one sheet of paper that looks visually about right. Okay. And you can, Photoshop also has guides that you can drag from the left and the top, and you can see if you're aligning your shots and if they are all the same size. And that can help you do this fairly quickly. You can align the guides and make sure that everything's good to go, everything's the same size. Once you do that, so here we go. Now I have 4 of my 12. So I'm going to need to repeat this 3 more times, essentially have 3 pages that I'm going to bring to the printer to print. So what I'll do is just so I can know that I can group this set of 4, I'm going to select all 4 layers, not selecting the background, and I'm going to hit this folder here. There's a folder right here. What that does is it puts everything into a group 1, and I'm just going to name this page 1 because this is page 1 for my print. All right. Now, I'm going to repeat the process. So I'm going to actually grab the next 4 photos in the sequence. I'm going to drag them to my piece of paper. I'm going to hit enter 4 times, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it's going to place all 4 pictures here. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to select all the layers and change the size of the layers all at once. I still have my previous page here visible for reference, and I have my guidelines. So I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to hit enter. And then what I'm going to do is individually move my layers into their sections, into their grids. You have to select each layer individually. So you always have to go back to the layer palette to do this. Okay, now I have this one. I'm going to repeat the process of creating the folder group. I'm going to select my layers again, and I'm going to hit the folder. That creates another group, and I'm going to name that page 2. And then I'm going to repeat the process one more time for the last set of 4 photos. Drag them in, 1, 2, 3, and 4. From hitting enter to place the photos into the Photoshop file. Then select all the photos, Command T for transform, drag my photos to match my grid size. Okay, and then individually separate the photos into their individual places. Okay, and then last step, select all of the 4 shots in this page, hit the folder button to group them into a page, and then name it page 3. Now, there's one last step that we have to do to actually take this stuff to the printer to print. Now, if you haven't guessed already, when you print this, you will have to cut it out. So just know that. Now, I didn't leave any borders on the edges, but if you wanted like a white border around each of your photos, you could also, based on that aesthetic, select everything and just make everything slightly smaller. So now you're able to potentially fit a border, an even border around everything. So this is up to you how you want to do it, how much white border you want to leave, how much space you want to give yourself for cutting. Remember, cutting is not always perfect, so it's always tough sometimes to get cuts on the exact same point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the visibility on pages 1, 2, and 1. I'm only going to have my visibility on page 3. Visibility is done through the eyeball. Then I'm going to go to File. I'm going to go to Save as Copy. And what we are going to do is okay, Photoshop doing funky things. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to name our file exactly what we named the exports. So printing demo, but however, this is my file for print page 1, or I'll match my layer name, page 3, and I'm going to change the type of file to a PDF with no layers. And we're going to put in a folder files for print, just so they're organized, so I know what to bring to the printer. Okay, then we're going to hit save. It's going to ask me some stuff about PDFs, which it always does when you save PDFs, and you're just going to hit OK, and you're going to hit save PDF and yes. And now I'm going to do this step. I'm going to turn visibility off on page 3, turn visibility on page 2, and repeat the process. Save as copy. I don't know why it keeps asking me to do this. Okay, then I'm going to use a similar name, but change the page name to 2. Remember, we're saving it as a PDF, and we're going to hit save. Okay, save PDF. Yes. PDFs always ask you a lot of disclaimers, but you just always hit yes. And then we're going to do lastly, page 1, save as copy on our computer. You're going to save to your computer, and we're going to name this page 1 PDF and save. And save. I wish PDFs didn't have to ask you all of those things to save, but it does. So just remember to always hit yes, yes, yes. Okay, now if I go to my Finder window, files for print, here we have page 1, 2, and 3. These PDF files are what you would send to the printer, bring to Kinko, to FedEx, and then once you have it printed on photo paper, you would cut them out and then use those to mount to your board. I would suggest doing it this way and then deciding how big your board is after you do this, after you lay your photos out. So some of you might have vertical photos or portrait photos. So I would do this, and then you can determine your dimensions, how much landscape you need on your foam core board to actually mount your photos. And so this is an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that I did this on. But if you're going to be using a bigger piece of paper to print on, then you need to make those determinations in your file size. But that's basically it. So I've recorded this demo that I just did. I will export it and put it on YouTube and send to you guys. So you can walk through it slowly at your pace. But this is essentially what you would do. And the key thing that I'm going to go back to always is you have to make sure that you are using 300 PPI resolution, and then also your Photoshop file that you've created is also 300 PPI and the proper dimension based on the piece of paper that you're using. Okay, so I know that was a lot. But I wanted to get through it. I wanted to get it all within this recording so that you guys have it, so that you can understand the process for getting files ready for print. So the final assignment is going to require you to present it on a board. That board is going to be is supposed to be neat, professional, and basically what's going to happen is you're going to read your designer statement and present your 12 photos. That will be the final presentation. That's what we'll be doing next week. And we'll be doing that in person. So that is the stipulations for the final. And are there any questions? Like I said, I'm going to upload the process that I just went through to YouTube for you guys. But the other thing is that I have the grades pretty much ready to go. I just need to publish them. It's 2 separate steps in the process. So I will do that. I know everybody's waiting on those. So I owe you guys that as well. Okay, now that I've said all that, are there any other questions that